Last year, we took a look at many cancelled creatures in the Resident Evil series. Originally, this was meant to be a 3-part series, but with further research and the addition of the latest remakes that have recently released, we now have more creatures to observe as well. These are dark times, so if dwelling into the forgotten sphere of the abandoned concepts is what you want, then let's begin. The Contamination Monster. Seeing as Resident Evil 0 is stuck with giant insect creatures as enemies aside from zombies, it's not surprising to see that this abomination was left out of the game. This could have been a carrier of the virus who would roam throughout the game, infecting certain areas to make it difficult for the player to backtrack if rooms and corridors are foggy and contaminated. The Leechman would certainly be the least of your worries if this creature were included in Resident Evil 0. With such a disturbing appearance, you would most certainly not want to see what this thing is capable of, or how it attacks its victims, and how it kills them. Adult Plagas. Ever wonder what a fully grown Plagas parasite would look like without a host to bury itself in? These are the original concepts for an adult Plagas, and in some ways, it looks more disturbing than the ones controlling a host's body. Seeing as there are 4 examples of the adult Plagas, this could indicate that they all have a unique appearance from one another, or these are simply 4 alternate designs for the adult Plagas. And since this is a parasite, I'd like to think that it has a variety of designs. Perhaps they vary on the environment, adapting to it, which would explain why one version closely resembles a slug, and why others have enormous jaws. I can't even imagine what this one does and how it latches onto its victims. I'd say let's hope for something like the adult Plagas to make an appearance in the Resident Evil 4 remake, but those delusions are quite slim, seeing as none of the cancelled creatures made it on the recent remakes. Colmillos. The Colmillos are the Plaga-infested wolves that appear in Resident Evil 4. In one way, these creatures weren't cancelled, but their original design did end up scrapped. If you look at the design they went with, it's likely that they went with it because it referenced John Carpenter's The Thing. Something utterly understandable. But when compared to the cancelled concept, it's not much more terrifying than an ordinary looking wolf that sprouted whips out of its back. It looks like the original Cerberus, but with the head of an arachnid-like parasite. This is one of the most daunting looking designs for a new creature. A combination of the zombie dog with the head fully mutated into this thing. One thing for sure, that maze garden in Resident Evil 4 would have been 10 times more terrifying if the Colmillos looked a lot like this. Let's move on to the Lurking Man. The Lurking Man had so many grotesque forms, starting from a lump of slime molding into a tall figure with outstretched arms. If shot at, it would simply regenerate its open wounds. Perhaps his appearance was meant to change while you fought against it, seeing as there are multiple designs of the Lurking Man changing forms from a liquefied being to a rotting corpse covered in black slime. The description on its evolutionary form reads that it should look like guns can't hurt it, as well as being big with poor eyesight. If ordinary firepower cannot penetrate it, then it is very likely that this creature was replaced with a regenerator, as its features appear to be too similar. The obvious difference being that the Lurking Man was most likely going to change its appearance over time, whereas the regenerator only has one particular design. The regenerator was one of the most iconic creatures in the game. It was the scariest enemy of Resident Evil 4, so if they had to choose between the regenerator and the Lurking Man, it's understandable that they'd choose the regenerator instead. If anything, the Lurking Man could have been the original design for the regenerator. And if they had gone with the Lurking Man, then does that mean that its many transformations would have taken part in the game as well? But if you think these cancelled Plagas designs were a missed opportunity, I'd say we need to look at even more cancelled Plagas creatures such as these. If you ask me, I would have scrapped most of the Plagas henchmen carrying firearms and crossbows to make room for these. An obese creature that was possibly created using multiple body parts from others, creating this eerie parasitic Frankenstein, having multiple eyes on its head or enormous eyes bulging out of its back. This creature would stalk its enemies through sound. Or how about these grotesque creatures? one that sprouts tentacles through its arms, including its face. I'd imagine it would wrap those tentacles around Leon's arms to prevent him from cutting them off with his combat knife, as well as preventing him from using any firearms, as it chews through his face. I must admit that even though these concepts weren't utilized, some of their features must have been used for other creatures that were in the game, or even a separate game such as Resident Evil Revelations. Is it a possibility? Speaking of Revelations, there were a great number of creature designs that were cut from the game. The creator of these designs mentioned that the vision was to create a creature that combines the affection of its beauty with the sea anemone, but it appears that none of these were utilized. Quite the shame, to be honest. If creatures such as these ones ended up in the game, I think they would have fit in perfectly with the locations presented. This abominable snowman would have been an interesting creature to face off against, instead of just taking down packs of T-Abyss-infected wolves. As for this creature design, maybe not the best choice to include an oversized lobster, as it's more humorous than frightening. The artist for these creature designs was Koki Kinoshita, and he had this to say. The idea of a body made of compound eyes was the first thought, because the illusion is shown with the eyes. It is a system that projects the luminescent substance in the body to the surroundings using the lens of the eye. However, I felt that I could not understand it at the first glance. The idea that the center of the face was split and a huge eye appeared was born here. Like with the early final boss designs for the original Resident Evil 2, there were multiple designs for Jack Norman's infected forms. The main goal was to create a tyrant capable of causing illusions to anything looking directly at its eye or eyes, tricking its victims into seeing copies approaching them. It is undeniable that these creature designs are exceedingly impressive, and having to choose a specific design would be devastating for the rest that get stored in the archives. The Licker Mid-Mutation. This is one of the latest cancelled creatures of the series, a zombie undergoing its Licker mutation. This was a creature that would be introduced in the Resident Evil 2 remake, but somewhere down the line, the decision came to cut the creature as they did with many original enemies like the infected crows, spiders, and many others. Its designs are very petrifying. Zombies in the remake became tougher to handle, so if one of them were to transform into this mid-mutation of a licker, you would undoubtedly run towards the opposite direction before it grabs you with its extended tongue. Imagine dealing with a horde of zombies when suddenly one of them begins mutating to this creature in front of you, extending its tongue to hit you from a distance, or worse, it begins pulling you towards it, giving the horde of zombies the biggest upper hand. Some would say that this was a missed opportunity for a creature this troubling, but here's my theory. If you look at the designs for this creature, you can tell that the developers tried to make it work, because we did receive a new enemy, but it was instead introduced in the remake of Resident Evil 3. Since this creature is not fully mutated, its primary attack would be to extend its tongue and attack the player with it. It will surely grab onto the player if close enough, and it would most likely mutate into this state in front of the player. These are the same feats that come from a parasite zombie. If this is true, then it appears that the new Licker mid-mutation zombie was complete, but its design would be altered so it becomes a new enemy type for the Resident Evil 3 remake. There are a couple extra cancelled creatures revealed alongside the Licker mid-mutation concepts. It is unknown whether they too would take part as an alternate design for this specific cancelled creature, but it is possible that the zombie in the wheelchair is an early concept for the detonator zombies introduced in Resident Evil Resistance. And as for the experimented zombie, what was its purpose? Was this an early stage of a test subject that would become a palehead zombie? Cancelled creatures have been a very popular topic in the series. They give us a glimpse of what could have been a part of the franchise, something you could have faced off against. We will never know if they would have made the games more difficult or scarier. They could have become iconic creatures that fans would have welcomed back into the series, such as the absence of many cancelled locations, something that we'll also be diving into next time. As for now, that's it for the video. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button to give this video a chance to grow. I'd like to thank all my Patreon supporters for their impeccable generosity. Your support means a lot to me, and you are part of the reason why I try to make the best content that I can. And if you like this content, check out the rest of my channel. You'll find more entertainment from separate franchises I like to cover, such as Mortal Kombat, Dragon Ball Z, Celebrity Deathmatch, Men in Black, The Mask, Batman comics, The Terminator, TMNT, Dino Crises, Resident Evil, and more. If you're a Patreon supporter, check out my exclusive videos such as the Gantz content. And if you'd like to show your support, go to my Patreon and support the channel, which is only $1. Sacrifice that McChicken for extra quality content, my friend. But anyways, I'll see you all in the next video, and remember to have an awesome day.